Let me ask you something before we even start. Do you know anyone under 35 with a pension? The kind where you work somewhere for 30 years and a check just shows up every month for the rest of your life, guaranteed, no matter what the stock market does? Think about it for a second. Chances are you don't. Your grandparents very likely had one. Your parents, maybe. You? Statistically, almost certainly not. This graph charts private sector access to pensions in America over time. In 1980, roughly 60% of workers had one. Today, that line has dropped down to roughly 15%, and it is still shrinking. Those old pensions, technically called defined benefit plans, worked by promising you a specific monthly payment in retirement. The company calculated it based on your salary and years of service, and they carried all the investment risk. If the market tanked right before you retired, they had to figure it out. You got your check regardless. Starting in the early 1980s, companies began shifting to defined contribution plans. You know this one, the 401k. From a corporate accounting perspective, the shift was brilliant. It moved all the investment risk off the company's books and directly onto yours. Your employer might match a portion of your contributions, but if the stock market crashes the year before you decide to retire, that is entirely your problem. Nobody is covering the gap. To see what this looks like in practice, meet Gabby. She is 27, a marketing coordinator, and smart. She has a 401k and contributes a little. But if you asked her right now what percentage of her money is in stocks versus bonds, she genuinely would not know. She is guessing. This shift assigned an entire generation a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar second job as uncredentialed pension fund managers. Gabby is now responsible for navigating market volatility and complex allocations, with no professional training and a retirement that depends entirely on her getting it right. People know they need to save, but almost no one actually knows the finish line. Take a second and guess how much money someone actually needs saved to replace a $50,000 a year salary in retirement. Most people's mental model lands somewhere in the low hundreds of thousands of dollars. The commonly cited baseline among financial planners is called the 4% rule. It suggests that to safely draw down your money over a few decades, you need roughly 25 times your annual withdrawal amount saved. This equation shows what the 4% rule requires. $50,000 multiplied by 25 means you need $1.25 million in liquid savings. That number doesn't include a paid-off house or net worth. It is $1.25 million dedicated purely to generating investment income. This burden rests squarely on the individual as your primary survival engine, sitting on top of whatever safety net Social Security provides. Relying on a guess that falls nearly $1 million short of the actual requirement creates a massive shortfall. For an individual worker, this gap is the difference between a sustainable retirement and running out of money while you still have years left. So if the target is over $1 million, why doesn't Gabby feel any panic? Why doesn't this feel urgent? A missed mortgage payment has a consequence in 30 days. A retirement shortfall has a consequence in 30 years. Human brains are notoriously bad at processing threats that far away. We are biologically wired to prioritize the immediate pressure right in front of us. This psychological trap is exactly why Gabby feels she can delay taking her 401k seriously. A crisis 3 decades away feels like a problem for a future version of herself that her brain doesn't quite recognize as real yet. Overcoming our own biological wiring is mandatory here. Treating a 30-year financial deadline with the exact same urgency as a 30-day bill is the only way to survive the retirement gap. Because there is no corporation backing that $1.25 million goal, time is the only replacement. Compound growth is the mechanism that makes this possible, but its power is extremely fragile. Waiting even a few years destroys its efficacy. This graph illustrates 2 diverging exponential growth curves. A single dollar invested at age 25 is worth radically more by age 65 than the exact same dollar invested at age 35. Look at the gap between these endpoints. That extra decade of compounding allows the market to multiply the final value of those early dollars 4 to 6 times larger than those added just 10 years later. The exact same unit of money holds entirely different power based purely on when it enters the market. Delaying your contributions is the most expensive mistake possible. So what does this multiplier effect actually mean for someone Gabby's age, right now, today, compared to waiting even 5 more years to get serious? The guaranteed safety net is permanently gone. To avoid walking into a multi-million-dollar crisis 3 decades from now, you have to immediately deploy time as your personal pension fund.
Let me ask you something before we even start. Do you know anyone under 35 with a pension? The kind where you work somewhere for 30 years and then a check arrives every single month for the rest of your life, guaranteed. Chances are you don't. Here is a number that stops you in your tracks when you see it laid out. In 1980, roughly 60% of private sector workers in America had access to a pension. Today, that number sits somewhere around 15%, and it continues to shrink every year. These were technically called defined benefit plans. Your employer promised you a specific monthly payment in retirement, calculated off your salary and years of service. Most importantly, the company carried all the investment risk to make that happen. If the stock market crashed the year before you retired, the company had to figure it out. You got your check regardless. Your grandparents very likely had this built-in financial safety net quietly backstopping their lives. For today's workers, that guarantee has completely vanished. Starting in the early 1980s, companies began shifting away from pensions and toward a defined contribution plan. You know this one. It's your 401k. Purely from a corporate accounting perspective, this transition was a stroke of genius. It successfully moved all long-term investment risk entirely off the company's books, but it moved that risk directly onto yours. Under this structure, the stakes change entirely. If the market crashes the year before you retire today, nobody is covering that gap for you. That is entirely your problem. A massive unspoken responsibility was suddenly dumped onto the shoulders of young workers. You are now expected to navigate this complex financial landscape with zero formal training, and the stakes for getting it wrong are enormous. Losing a pension means you inherited an entirely new job. You are now your own pension fund manager. How much money does someone actually need saved by retirement to safely replace, say, $50,000 a year in income? Take a second. Really guess the number. This bar chart compares what most people assume they need against what the math actually requires. Using a widely accepted withdrawal approach called the 4% rule, generating $50,000 a year in retirement requires a staggering $1.25 million in purely investment assets. Let's look at a completely normal, capable 27-year-old. We'll call her Guessing Gabby. She contributes a little to her 401k on autopilot. She's heard of a Roth IRA, but if you asked her if she is on track to hit $1 million, she wouldn't have a concrete answer. The reason Gabby isn't panicking about this massive target is psychological. A missed mortgage payment has a consequence in 30 days. A retirement shortfall has a consequence in 30 years. The human brain is notoriously bad at processing financial threats that are 3 decades away. The danger feels abstract, like it belongs to some future version of you. There is exactly one mathematical tool capable of closing the massive gap left by the death of the pension. It is compound growth. Let's run the actual numbers. This timeline plots out 2 different approaches. Down here on the axis, we have person A. They invest $300 a month starting at age 25 and stop contributing completely at age 35. That's 10 years of contributions, and they never add another dollar. Now we expand the timeline and plot out person B. This person waits until 35 to start, but then invests that same $300 a month consistently for the next 30 years straight, all the way to retirement. As we map the growth, person A's final balance mathematically crushes person B's. This happens despite person A contributing significantly less total cash out of their own pocket. It is purely the extra untouched decade of compounding that generates this wealth. Those early dollars spend 30 additional years growing on top of themselves, creating a massive snowball that late starters simply never catch up to. When you start investing your money is mathematically far more critical than how much you eventually invest in total. Good intentions alone don't solve this. Workers routinely derail their own progress through quiet errors, like treating retirement planning as a task for later, or leaving their 401k sitting in a default, overly conservative allocation. Another severe error is failing to capture a full employer 401k match. That match is free money. Ignoring it is functionally equivalent to leaving a portion of your salary on the table every single pay period. When market volatility hits, fear drives people to pull their money out. This locks in permanent losses rather than writing out the short-term turbulence that long-term investing is specifically designed to weather. And finally, there is the Social Security trap. This program was originally built to supplement other savings. It was never designed to be a complete replacement for a full corporate pension. Relying on default settings or operating under your grandparents' assumptions practically guarantees a financial shortfall in this risk-shifted system. So let's build the framework. Step 1. Log in and increase your 401k contribution immediately. Do it just enough to capture your full employer match. Step 2. Open a Roth IRA. This is an account where your money grows completely tax-free. Set up a small automatic monthly contribution and treat it exactly like a mandatory recurring bill. Step 3. Spend 15 minutes reviewing what your money is actually invested in. Adjust your accounts away from cash or conservative bonds and toward a long-term, growth-oriented allocation appropriate for your age. That is your homework. Take 15 minutes today to check your match and verify your asset allocation. Don't push it off for a future version of yourself to figure out. The guaranteed safety net your grandparents enjoyed is gone, and it isn't coming back. But by taking deliberate action today, you give time and math exactly what they need to build a new one.